My agent was going through some offers, and then she said, and here's a weird one.
I remember reading it and then thinking, wow, there's something incredible happening between these pages.
It's not your typical Hollywood fare. It's new and it's different.
And reading the script, it made absolute sense. Make a film of it with a group of actors playing several parts.
Oh, this is going to make a heck of a dinner party story.
Initially, I was going to get to play 2 different parts, and then they said, now you're going to play 3 parts, and then 4 parts, and then 5, and now I'm playing 6 different characters.
It puts you in a slightly woozy, dreamlike space because it's expanding your mind in some way.
It's just this highfalutin piece of art. After reading it, I didn't have any questions.
Made sense to you?
No.
We live in this age where everyone tries to separate thrilling and exciting and romantic from ideas. It's like some kind of violation that if you're making it exciting, then the ideas are somehow not worthy of being considered.
As we say in Germany, we have the separation in I and U, which basically means serious or entertaining, never both.
I remember looking at my co-directors and saying, I can't believe we're actually going to make this movie. I mean, you don't get to make experimental, big-budget movies.
Welcome to Neo Soul.
So much of the movie, thematically and in the book, is about this transcending of boundaries. And we thought that it would be neat to try to transcend time and space and storytelling and genre.
There's a thriller.
An escape movie.
You know, dystopian future.
Film noir.
Period films.
Science fiction.
Comedy, really.
You've already eaten your pudding!
It's 6 stories set in vastly different periods.
On one page, you'd go from 1851 to 1974 to, you know, a bit of the Road Warrior.
These lunatics who made The Matrix are making this enormous film, and they're offering you 6 evil cameos. So I took a look at it.
I genuinely would have played a donkey in this movie because I was so excited about what they were just trying to achieve.
It's a hugely brave task to take it on.
Action!
It's exciting in every way, and it hasn't been done before. It's not just another film. It's really quite challenging.
Challenging is a modest estimate of it.
Logistically, it's really difficult. It's like 6 books, all intermingled in one story. If one crew shot it, you'd be doing it for 7 months.
We had to do something different in terms of being able to put the pieces together.
The best idea was that Tom was going to do 3 stories, Lana and Andy do 3 stories. And then how that works and how you make that work was very complicated.
When I found out that it was going to be 2 directing teams, 2 units, I thought, wow, well, I don't know how that's going to work, but I trust that it's going to work.
But if you change one of the unit schedules, then suddenly that affects the other unit because, oh, well, we've got to change our schedule, so now suddenly we need Jim Broadbent this day, and the other unit was planning to use Jim Broadbent that day. It must be a logistical nightmare.
The whole creation of a schedule took months and months to figure out.
Okay, for rehearsal, clear back.
It seemed like a mathematical insanity. And then once we got going, just the physical challenges of 2 units, the fact that we were filming in sort of 4 different countries.
Which means that actors are one day on this unit, and the next day on that unit, and the next day they're back on this unit.
This morning I had my throat slit by Hugh Grant, and we all jumped ship, literally, onto the boat.
It's a very tight, interlocking Rubik's Cube kind of schedule.
There's so much going on in this film. You've got Duna playing Tilda.
You know, so you've got Susan Sarandon's an Indian man.
Today we've got Jim Sturgis playing a Korean.
How do we do this? And we've got 3 weeks to do it in.
We have people from 19 different countries that are in this movie. A lot of them are speaking different languages than are their primary vocabularies.
Never in my life have I been asked to do anything up to about 30 accents. This movie, you have various people changing from other cultures into another accent.
I don't understand.
My joke was, this is like doing 3 seasons of repertory theater, you know, 6 parts apiece, all in one movie.
I was like, what? What?
I mean, every time I would pass Keith David in the hallway, he'd be dressed like a guy from a different century. I saw him as a Kubaka the slave, and then I saw him like as, you know, he looked like Shaft.
And then when you see them played by the same actors, it was like, wow.
I mean, that's been one of the great joys of this film, is seeing so many actors completely transformed.
We all just say to each other in the makeup trailer in the morning, who are you? What are you playing?
That part was thrilling as an actor and a huge challenge.
I mean, there's such a feast for your imagination and your eyes.
I think the films that are widely admired and revered, in fact, are revered because they're rather like Trojan horses. They're compelling, they get inside you, they make you cry, they make you jubilant, yet they're also packed inside sort of little Greek soldiers, little ideas.
It's a good tagline. Cloud Atlas will butcher you in the middle of the night while you're sleeping.
That they're sewing this all together, and nothing really is by chance. You know, they're working it all out, and it's all highly calculated.
Sort of shaking up the box and playing with it in a really fun way.
You know, properly brilliant.
It ticked the boxes artistically for me.
It's genuinely exciting to be a part of.
It's so beautiful, and there's so much to see.
Spine-tinglingly epic and moving.
I don't think you could ever be bored for a second.
It's this extraordinary experience where what looks like it can't be done is somehow being done.
So many movies say one thing, and they pursue that one thing. This has a scope that's bigger than anything I've ever seen.
It's been a once-in-a-lifetime filmmaking experience. I will never be a part of another film like this in my life. I know it.
Our lives are not our own. There are 6 stories.
Set in vastly different periods.
Past and present.
From 1851 to 1974 to a dystopian future, every one of them is connected somehow.
As each story evolves, you start to see how they all link, and that's incredibly exciting. It's such a feast for your imagination.
We birth our future.
Mom and Dad, as I call Lana and Andy and Tom, they have thought out the interlockings of it all, very much so, and they continue to discover it every day. You like the flare? No flare. Flare. Boom, boom. I don't know really how they did it and how they kept it all straight. We work from dawn till dusk.
As soon as you broke out the plot elements and the character elements of every story, you saw how similar they were.
What are you reading?
Old letters. And how often you could use a setup in one story and then the payoff in another story.
Discovering this was the real exciting moment. I mean, when we discovered that we might be able to tell several stories, create a narrative arc all the way through without any repetition and really make it work. That felt suddenly extremely exhilarating because it felt super abstract and still possibly coherent to what.
My dearest Sixsmith, I shot myself through the roof of my mouth this morning.
There are so many moments where the cuts between the scenes are so meaningful and poignant. And what starts to happen is you get the sense that, in fact, it's not just several souls that are being reincarnated, but it feels like it's all just one. It's a very peculiar birthmark.
My little comet.
Cloud Atlas was structure-driven. Each of the 6 worlds is a different type of story vehicle. There's the journal of Ewing.
Friday the 15th.
And letters.
By the time you read this, I will be on my way to Edinburgh.
And the airport novel. Yeah.
What would Dad do?
And then the film. The last one, when all of this technology is gone after civilizations you're left with what we had in the first place. It's the campfire yarn.
All voices tied up into one.
The thematic connections became very evident, one to the next.
I think each story is told with a nod towards its traditional genre. I might start to take this women's lib thing more seriously. Although they nod in those directions, they don't go too far, because then there would be a great crunching of gears when you cut between the stories.
If a genre's there, then, of course, what exists can be subverted and tweaked with and played, and it gave me an instant fix to the problem. How can I make these parts different enough from one another? I thought I'll choose models. First section's Moby Dick.
You're a runaway slave. I'm a lawyer. You imagine we could possibly be friends?
The voyage of Adam Ewing is actually his voyage becoming an abolitionist.
Yeah.
It's not just how he gets home to San Francisco.
But we don't see that part
Right.
of the story, and the book is actually cut in half.
Right.
And Frobisher never has access to the full piece of art.
Right.
So he never learns.
Yeah,
In
he
some
never
ways,
learns
it
what the
makes
book is
sense
actually
why
about.
He's the most broken
Yeah.
of all of the characters.
A half-finished book is, after all, a half-finished love affair.
1930s, Gulp. Isherwood, Christopher Isherwood. My old university tutor, actually, recommended his memoir, Lions and Shadows.
Frobisher then ends up creating these letters, and Louisa reads that inspires her.
In fact, a report Sixsmith he has written forms the backbone of this particular story.
Louisa Ray is supposed to be sort of, you know, a classic mystery piece set in the 70s. It's operated like a film noir.
I hope you realize you just said exactly what every character in any decent mystery says right before they get killed. Good night, Javier.
It'll have the afros, a shaft, and the big American cars squealing around San Francisco.
Read some airport thriller books whose names I no longer remember.
Ultimately, her story becomes a book.
Which Timothy Cavendish
Reads almost like a Bible over and over in the Aurora house.
You're breaking the Ruddy Anti-Incarceration Act or some ruddy thing like. Oh!
I am Nurse Nukes. It's the most comedic, if you like, of all the stories. It has slapstick elements in it.
Cavendish!
Well, I'm starting to get onto home turf now, so I kind of didn't really need the models.
There is a method to this tale of madness.
What Cavendish wrote has become the great words of wisdom throughout all time. He's a great literary model, a philosophical hero to a future generation. And the way he's presented is by me in this really bad TV version.
I will not be subjected to criminal
abuse.
And actually, for the future, you can't be wrong. You can merely be, it's a big merely, you can be internally inconsistent. That will pop the bubble of science fiction.
By having actors play multiple parts, you actually get to see what happens when Adam Ewing, played by Jim Sturgis, goes off and becomes this abolitionist crusader.
Right now!
We must all fight, and if necessary, die. 200 years later, in Zachary's story, Sumi, she's a god.
Let sun guide your heart.
Our almost immediate next thing that we realized was this other character of Louisa and Mirren made perfect sense.
It's through a connection with her that not only is his life changed forever, but so is the human race.
What is this place?
We're drawn to this concept where, what if Goose is also Zachary, and how does a villain become a hero?
Dr. Goose, he's one of the guys whose evil deeds will resonate in the past and the future.
When Zachary looks haunted and guilty, you feel that it's guilt from earlier lives. It's actually
And of course.
guilt from Goose's acts.
Got it.
Perfect.
What I have learned is that writing the book itself was a walk in the park, infinitely easier than making it happen on the screen.
the breadth, the scope, the vast amount of time and space that the movie covers. That is going to be a slap in the head.
There are whole movements I wrote imagining us meeting again and again in different lives, in different ages.
We have a sense of chronologic experience in the movie that is outside of logics.
Just trying to understand why we keep making the same mistakes.
You dissolve the idea of time, and our happy endings can be both past and future.
I believe that if you, dear reader, can extend your patience for just a moment, you will find there is a method to this tale of madness.
I honestly didn't think this book would ever be filmed, so I didn't have to make things easy for you.
By taking a slightly experimental structure, you made people connect to it as a whole novel instead of 6 stories. We thought we could emulate that in our medium.
Well, for what it's worth, it's gorgeous and it works. The influence of film on novelists' imaginations is something that particularly interests me. You just fall through the floor and you're in a new level of reality. It's what all film is about. Just making another one, a little magic rectangle in a movie theatre or on your TV screen, and you're in the room, yet you've gone through into this other place at the same time. How does that work?
I heard it in a dream. I was in a nightmarish cafe, and the waitresses, they all had the same face.
I sort of feel like a provider of stem cells, which the directors have then sort of grown into their own desired sort of organs of the scenes. And
into an abomination.
Even the conception comes in stages. First part of the conception, probably 21 at Kent University studying English, and I read If on a Winter's Night a Traveller by Italo Calvino. It's a sequence of interrupted narratives, and you want to find out what happens next. And only once I got to the end did I realise that I never would. That was frustrating. And I do remember thinking, well, what would it be like if you now put a mirror against these books and then played them out in reverse order? So this sort of slow forward, backwards process. That was Cloud Atlas.
The origin story was set of V for Vendetta. We were shooting with Natalie Portman, and she was sitting on the set, totally engrossed. I was like, oh, what is that? And she was like, oh my God, this book is amazing. I read it that weekend, and it blew my mind. Even when I was writing my first manuscript for Cloud Atlas, I was thinking, I can't write a novel, they're enormous. But what I can do is a page, what I can do is a scene. Sentences add up to paragraphs, paragraphs add up to scenes, scenes add up to sort of chunks, chunks add up to chapters, chapters add up to novels. Okay, that's how I write a novel.
Tom and I were doing some publicity for perfume, which is the first time we worked together, and he was telling me and his girlfriend Marie about it very excitedly.
I couldn't get enough of that book when I first read it. I was just so taken with each of the worlds and stylistically with how David Mitchell's managed to create with such joy and the sort of delight in storytelling.
When I conceived Cloud Atlas, the biggest thing in my mind was, can I make the structure work?
There are 6 apparently unrelated stories, but which are linked in various ways. And each story seems to have a different genre and set in a different time. Each one draws you onto the next.
Anyone who's familiar with the book will know how those 6 stories are broken up. You have half a story and then half a story and half a story, and you work your way up through the 6 half stories, and then the latest story, you get the whole story, and then you work back down again.
The structure was there first, which is unusual. Often it's the plot or the characters.
How is this possible? When I read the book, I have to go back and forth, and try to figure out exactly what it is.
It's a scale of ideas. It's love for human beings. It's boldness and it's audacity.
It took me a couple times to read it to really wrap my head around it. And, but I loved it. I mean, it's like, what a journey.
It was
really exciting to read. As soon as you got to that point where the sentence ends and you realize that, oh, this is, I have to keep the whole picture of this book in my head.
I had, in fact, read the book, and I remember thinking at the time, I wonder if they'll try and make a movie out of it. It doesn't really seem possible.
And what if no one believes?
Someone already does.
Everyone who reads the book says, this can't be a movie. It's impossible. It's impossible.
The relative complexity and the structure of the novel and how you sort of take that down to a single narrative.
We knew that for us, the book couldn't be literally translated into a film. You couldn't shoot these discrete stories and then make these exact cuts to a film audience because the medium is so different.
The question was, could the book even be turned into a script?
We all spend, whatever, 8 or 9 hours a day just sitting, looking at the novel and creating a blueprint of what it could be.
You would have each of the stories lined out and they would stretch, some of them would stretch further than the others. And so we were like, oh my God, look, these are happening, these two moments are happening almost precisely in the same plot if you were to just put them, sandwich them on top of each other. They are the same story in a lot of ways. It's about, each of the stories is about, power dynamics and exploitation, and the weak are meat and the strong do eat, and they follow similar arcs.
There were 5 or 6 drafts of the script that sort of varied in length, they varied in sort of approach, but they would always move forward.
You dissect and then you separate and then you create little islands, lots of islands, more and more. And then you start to decide, usually if a novel as rich as David's, you will have to make choices towards things you really, really care for.
What these guys seem to have done is, of course they have to take away from the book. I mean, it's a huge book and it's such an ambitious film project to kind of cram this into a, cinematic time frame. What is an ocean but a multitude of drops? Whatever they seem to take away, they seem to add something from the other side, from the visual medium, from, playing around with the ideas of the themes in the book and actually sort of bringing them much more to the forefront and to life.
One of those elements was that we treated the whole thing of reincarnation differently, and that our reincarnation subject, which was in the novel very strongly related to the appearance of the comet, that we distance ourselves a bit from the idea that these are actually reborn characters, but we're trying to relate them more through, let's say, artistic production that comes out of them or is related to them.
One of the breakthroughs for us was that you have to abandon the idea that it's 6 stories. It's one story. Each of the stories is reflecting on one another as you go through the entire movie.
Actually, structurally, you wrote the 6 pieces as single stories and then cut them in half.
Yes, I did. I knew where sort of the cliffhanger moment would come. But yeah, I wrote them in sequence in the order that you get going into the middle of the book. And then spent 20 minutes with a cut and paste facility on my computer.
20 minutes.
I know. Don't hate me.
20 minutes.
That's about what it was for us. 20 minutes.
It is a left field adaptation of a huge tome that has a very specific kind of like bell curve structure to it. It rises up and comes down. And yet they took this huge deck of cards and shuffled it all together. It's Cloud Atlas 2.0. David Mitchell did the first thing, and they used the architecture of cinema in order to make it so that it is far from being an episodic piece of work.
It's this sort of space project size operation that any movie is dedicated to making another level of reality in that little magic rectangle just glowing there in the dark. What an amazing species we can be sometimes.
I can't explain it, but I knew when I opened that door.
A powerful déjà vu ran through my bones.
We all play 6 roles. Sometimes I'm the hotel manager. That's one of my roles. But key scene. It's a type of fun that you don't get to have in movies. Selfishly, it's ridiculous amounts of fun. professionally, it's a ridiculous amount of work.
The idea of making a movie where one person got to play 4, 5, sometimes 6 different characters really excited me.
How does it feel?
You really get excited when you sit behind a character and you watch the range and the different subtle little things an actor can do to change the meaning of a performance so profoundly.
There's just so much going on in this film. You've got actors playing different characters.
Some in prosthetics, some men are playing women, some women are playing different nationality, well, men are playing different nationality. It's all completely crazy. It seems almost completely impossible.
I really hope that everybody is prepared for the challenge.
When I got the call saying there are 2 more characters they want you to play, I just couldn't imagine in my wildest dream what other 2 women could I possibly play. And then I found out, no, one is a man. And then one is a Jewish German woman. And I thought, wow, I never would have thought those would have been characters offered to me. So I just got more and more excited as the days went on.
Cut.
It was fascinating to see the transformation and to see the actors actually, you know, take the journey to really be somebody different.
The fact that someone is offering me the part of a 23rd century cannibal chief, for that reason alone, I'm doing this job. There was very little throat slitting in Sense and Sensibility, I remember. I always felt there should have been more. It's very nice not to have to be the nice guy. Evil's always more fun.
He says hello.
Ben Whishaw, playing my wife, lying in bed next to me, was really horrified by some of the things that were coming out of my mouth.
Okay, I'm gonna have a wank now.
We all just say to each other in the makeup trailer in the morning, "Who are you? What are you playing?"
It's been amazing to show up day after day and see the other cast members in the makeup trailer, and sometimes having conversations with people and then realizing, like, 2 minutes in, oh my God, Hugh Grant, I had no idea that was you. Or, oh my God, Duna, you're a Mexican lady today.
I don't understand.
It's like, don't I know you?
Seeing actors and not knowing who they were because they were kind of covered in something. Is that you, Hallie? Oh my God, you know.
It was like a crazy masquerade ball where all these actors would walk past each other and they wouldn't know who that was. And they would come to you later and say, who was that? Was that Jim Broadbent?
It's a whole dimension for the audience to enjoy. And I think people enjoy seeing actors and taking on different characters. I think that's part of the fun of acting and part of the fun of the audience as well.
Cankerous witch!
As actors, you've got to jump in and be incredibly brave.
Seriously, I would put on nose and chin and whatever else they asked me to do just to be part of the whole trip of it.
Having the courage to stand up and be who you are, so in a funny way, underpins the book and the film.
I didn't shave my legs.
But I've never been in a fat suit and a dress.
To transform into someone who looks completely different from me, it was a great experience.
The way it impacts the work that we did as an actor, it instantaneously, I found, put us in a direction for the voices.
Who's your daddy?
For the physicality of it. You cannot dress up as Dr. Henry Goose and not talk like Henry Goose and sound like him. There's something about the way each layer of the character is put on, and it's about a 4-hour process.
You know, I forgot that this stuff has been applied to me. It feels so natural. After a while, I just...
For myself, I could look in the mirror and already be well down the road to finding, you know, what the master gestures are going to be, all the little tricks of the trade.
The challenge was to sort of set aside your ego in a way. Everyone's having to deal with sort of serving something that's bigger than you.
I was nervous about playing a different race and whether that would be acceptable or not. But that nervousness was overridden with excitement, you know, and the challenge of being able to do it. But then I realized that in the world that we had created, it was perfectly acceptable.
Stay close. Fabricants get snatched here.
Cinema is about performance, obviously, That's what's so exciting about the job, because it's really relishing what actors can bring to the roles, and it makes complete sense in the nature of the novel.
This was really something groundbreaking in my career, to be able to transcend who I really am and be in the body of someone else, of a different time and ethnic group and space.
And the movie is about transcending barriers, and even just in the way that we approached having multiple actors play it was in itself a transcendence of a barrier.
Can't even believe I agreed to do this.
Whatever you do, don't look back. This whole movie is an actor's dream, not only to play with different characters, which is wonderful. I am General Anko Akis. But also to play with such a wonderful group of actors. They want the explosion, the chaos and carnage.
There are various star vehicles where the leading actor has played several parts, but where the whole raft of actors will be playing a raft of characters is quite unique.
Very well. Let's see you lower the main topsail.
Actually, it's hard to think of any film that's done it at all.
This project ended up being this kind of dream team of actors. I mean, they are all so good and so beyond what you normally get as an ensemble.
It's always going to be special, and I'm going to always remember the experience and everything I got from it and all the lessons.
I'll drink to that.
Nobody just comes on and has a version of that is familiar of them. We've all been turned into 6 other actors that we will now have to compete with for jobs in the future. Competing with myself. It's almost as though the rules of cinema and the style of our directors are going to be the physical thing that unifies what the entire story is.
Camera right.
There you go. In this book, the Cavendish line, that was the key for me when I read it. While my
extensive experience as an editor has led me to a disdain for flashbacks and flash forwards.
I was like, that's it.
The film cuts it all up right away, so you're in 6 stories at once.
You get an explanation about something in a different story, and it still explains the previous one.
And all becomes clear.
It is so cinematic, in my opinion, to be able to put time in the washing machine, put it in full speed and
swapping from 1936 to 1957, then back to 2012, and then back to 1957.
There's a momentum that builds up from these interlocking stories where one story is sort of blending into the next, and the energy from one story is sort of feeding the next story, so they slowly start to feel like one thing.
We just started finding those connective moments, and it was amazing how all of them matched up.
I will not be subjected to criminal abuse.
They seem like they're telling different stories, but ultimately they come together.
I think you're gonna love this one. The overall theme of the movie is that every act that we do, every piece of cruelty, every moment of love affects the past and the future. It's an examination of the human condition in a very artistic setting.
Gorgeously, it's actually the relationships between the characters, they get reincarnated. It's not just the people, it's the relationships between them and the nature of those.
The birthmark, which is such a potent sign, a reappearing thing that you start looking for. These are actually reborn characters.
Each one of those characters, the soul evolved in order to have the strength to be the character that I ended up being. I start off as old native woman. She was the least evolved. And then I move on to Jocasta, who's a bit more evolved, but yet she's living as a ghost of a person. She's sort of a shell of a person. And then I go on into the next life to be Louisa Ray, who's struggling very hard to find her voice and find her strength and live up to her father, which she does. And then I go on to play a woman, Marinum, who ultimately is part of saving the world as they know it.
You fall, I catch you.
And without going through each one of those lifetimes, Marinum would never be able to be. So that's how I've seen my journey.
You fall, I'll catch you.
Tom's characters do really not succeed. I mean, either they get beaten up or he really fails in trying to change. The greed is not completely vanished out of his soul. There's still some dark shadows.
He has old Georgie telling him Goose's own ideology, which is the weak are made, the strong do we. And when Goose is unmasked as the poisoner and the killer, that's what he tells Adam Ewing is his philosophy.
That defines every relationship on God's green earth.
Sorry, kid. The weak are meat and the strong do eat.
There's the strange habit for the top dog to find someone to enslave.
Two is involved in the slave trade. It's very sad. So the stakes are quite high. Are we saying that nothing ever changes? So people have to come back and do it all over again? Is that the movie we're making?
Of course, there's women who aren't listened to and aren't valued. And what does he have to say about the nature of women?
Some souls never get better like mine. In fact, in some ways, they get worse.
Profit is always a big component of that level of evil. And so that was all been played by Hugh Grant.
The most futuristic one, I am Cannibal Chief. Nasty piece of work who does a lot of throat slitting and a little bit of raping.
We were able to, continue his evolution, devolution, whatever illusion. into spiraling towards a character that ultimately is just a cannibal. We've tried to relate the idea of eternal recurrence beyond only the idea of characters or of souls.
It was all connected to this idea that started happening when we were integrating all of the stories and we were using multiple actors.
I called about an old recording written by a man named Robert Frobisher.
Oops. We were like, well, we should integrate design as well because we wanted to keep making it one movie.
One of the biggest and earliest ideas being the chateau that Vivian Ayres, the composer, lives in, becomes 80 years later the prison for the same soul. We tried to design rooms, like the Papa Song set, with a very particular pattern in the building structure. Yeah. And we took the same room and then transformed it into the Starlight Bar.
Ladies and gentlemen!
Not only do we use spaces, but we use textures of costumes and patterns of costumes. Like the tattoo is actually related to a pattern that was on Vivian Ayres' night dress.
Really? Yeah. I want to see it again.
All right, let me hear it.
When we had the first read-through, the first thing they did was they played us the music.
The moment that the sextet is created, we always said, okay, it has to become an inherent part of the musical structure of the film and has its own reincarnations in different shapes.
It's beautiful.
40 years later, it ends up as the muzak that's being played in the elderly home, which is turning into the score of the movie that is being based on Cavendish's life, which is again the sextet, which becomes the inspiration for the mechanical melody that the fabricants are singing when they get to exaltation. So it becomes actually the death song of the fabricants that ultimately we see at the end of the movie.
It's the Requiem.
Their Requiem.
Requiem. And Frobisher writes it as his own Requiem.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, that is the most exciting thing about the film, is that it is about your legacy, and what you put out into the world, whether that might be an entry in a journal or a piece of music that you've written. I really believe that the audience has to participate with us to make this believable.
I love spotting the 101 ways you logically link one scene through to the next. It's really exciting. You don't have to consciously spot all of these. You don't have to think, aha, yeah, same, nice one. It just somehow works, even if you don't know it's there. It's as if I sort of built my book out of Lego, and you didn't really add any extra blocks or anything, but you disassembled my Lego novel and then reassembled it shape of a film.
Cloud Atlas is not just a redo or a rewrite of the original source material, but actually a science fiction-y kind of construction of David Mitchell's original story.
To do a special effects film, never done that. I've never worn massive amounts of makeup.
They were wanting to push, you know, cinematic boundaries, and that was just hugely exciting.
It's a spectacle.
What is science fiction? It's this slippery, slippery beast to try and get. It hasn't got a clear border, which is great, but you know when you're deep in the heart of it, and you know when you're moving away from it. Nonetheless, if a genre's there, then, of course, what exists can be subverted and tweaked with and played and paid homage to. It's great goo to work with.
We had to invent a society of 2133 based around consumerism. And then you have to invent what people consume in those days. It's also based around the Papasan restaurant, and so what is a fast food restaurant in that period? And the people who serve are manufactured.
You can write the word fabricant and you produce in somebody's imagination something that is other, something that isn't a human.
Fabricants can be excised for this.
But as soon as you cast an actress, they're not different. They're just as human as everyone else. So it's up to the actress to create this feeling of other.
After I finished reading the book and script, it's strange, but I felt a connection to Somi. This was all new to me because this is my first Western film.
She could bring in all these profound, probably even personal experiences and translate them into the character like, ooh, this is weird.
Yeah,
and
that's neat.
The insecurity of it is so
amazing,
moving because it has zero manufactural noise.
The fabricant lives at Papasan is no better than slaves.
They're not allowed to have any feelings, thoughts, or emotions. And they're like working machines.
I think it's about freedom. Through 6 different time periods, there's an awful lot of abuse of slaves going on in this film.
This idea that if you kill a fabricant, it's like just kind of changing your car. You get another model.
If the enforcers and the DNA sniffers find out about your connection to Unit 939, you will be excised. Chang is the first science officer for the Union Rebellion.
Not lieutenant or not like lieutenant colonel of the Union, the first science officer.
Jim Sturgis had to be the kind of kind soul that just invites predators in. And then he had to be strong enough to be an action star.
Yeah, but we didn't want an atypical action star for that role. We wanted somebody who was the first science officer of the Union Rebellion.
Whereas Adam sort of has a much more unsure and unstable approach to what he's doing, Chang has a very military sort of precision.
Chang makes Somi become strong and stand up to the world with dignity.
The idea that a construct could possibly challenge authority has to be stamped on.
May I say you speak consumer surprisingly well.
Unanimity 대부분들이 한 가지 하나밖에.
One way I tried to generate a temporal distance between the 6 worlds was to change English.
Right, Mr. Ewing, continue.
I will not let you down. Now, this used to play viddies, but the chip is corrupted.
And in the Somni story, it suddenly seemed natural to create this English-sounding grammar for unanimity. So the forces of consumerism have this American-based dialogue.
What is the first catechism?
Honor thy consumer.
And because we were so far in the future, because there was this kind of consumer sort of speak, it was a very delicate, very finely painted sort of accent.
It culminates in the book with the middle section with this Pigeon Valley speak.
Feeling our own and you're a real kowtow.
This kind of like 6th generation of whatever we're speaking right now.
Because it feels like a breaking civilization, and that's what we wanted. We wanted the fall to represent this fall in language. But it was hard because you have to make it understandable so that people can follow the story.
You burn them about the true and never tell them the whole truth. I need a cog what you're doing.
It's one of the things people were really scared of when we were starting to present the project, and when people were reading the script, they said, like, what do you mean? I mean, they're actually saying these weird words and lines?
Smart rope. I like to think that the more people are dumbed down to, the sharper the hunger becomes to not be dumbed down to, and the better the response would be when audiences are treated like grown-ups.
The hardest one, I think, was the Zachary story. Where do you put them in history for the viewer without making it look like it's set in the 16th century?
It was necessary for us to have an actual reproduction of Sonmi's language as her legacy.
But the manufacturing of the book was something that was tricky for us.
Mind the words of Sonmi.
After the fall, how do you reproduce it? And so what we came up with was this very complicated idea where the freed fabricants are pulling off their collars, right? Because this is Sonmi's symbol when she's actually holding up the broken collar. They pound them flat, so the cover is this interwoven pounded metal. And then they take their slave clothes and they cut their hair like she did, and they stitch the words transcribed by Archivist Park into the paper.
So the book itself is like a symbol of their own liberation.
Yeah, it's just...
It's all there. It's all there, people.
It's 2 seconds close up.
On the 5th viewing.
How much do you need?
This is the type of movie that people will see something that they've never seen before.
It's a film about freedom and oppression. It's about the world of science and progress, and how something as horrific as the kind of slave trade evolves with us and then manifests itself into genomically engineered human beings. I won't let you go.
Whether it's in the past or whether it's in the far future, you have to do the right thing, hoping that somewhere in that process, they do make a difference.
I had been here before, another lifetime ago. The love of my life, what had happened to her? To a soul-bound love.
I mean, it's such a great love story that is told in these incredible moments. So you kind of see the young love version with Chang and Sonmi and Tilda and Ewing, and then you see the middle-aged love story with Tom and Holly, and then there's the more mature love story with Cavendish and Ursula.
We really try to relate to the idea of eternal recurrence. Every story progresses towards a certain climactic moment. Somehow it feels like throughout those ages, choices that have to be made by characters basically fulfills what another character has started hundreds of years earlier.
You ever think the universe was against you?
There had to be a meta-narrative to the whole story that we could say, okay, well, let's start off with a character who is a pure predator, and then over the course of the story, encounters someone who they fall in love with, and then they sort of change, and then they become the comet character who can actually change the world and potentially make the world a better place.
When I first read it, knew that I was going to be playing Isaac Sachs and was going to have this scene with Hallie as Louisa Ray.
I can't explain it, but I knew when I opened that door...
that he knew he was going to meet somehow the woman who's going to change his life.
Uncle Zach!
One of the other great truths about the world sometimes. Not just love at first sight, but love at first cosmic connection.
And he describes it in this epiphany where he suddenly realizes, oh my God, I just met somebody, and I think my life has changed just by meeting this girl. And in the montage, we have this great moment where he says, yesterday my life was headed in one direction, and you see Goose snipping off these blue buttons. And then the next line, today my life is headed in another direction, and you see Isaac Sachs has placed the Swaneke report in Louisa's thing. So he's sort of changed the direction of his life towards sort of good guys.
What's your name, darling?
And he has this moment where he could actually continue where he left off his soul. He sees Holly as the Indian woman, and if he just gives up the anger and the rage he feels, who knows what direction his life could take, but instead he throws the critic over there, and then that life doesn't end very well.
She has to continue offering herself to him before he really gets
like,
it.
when is this guy gonna learn?
That's it. The music from my dream.
Something that was important to have in the story was to have a sort of love affair between a young person and an old person.
Must have misheard me. I said I had a melody, not a malady.
Despite the fact them both using each other, there is, at least on Frobisher's part, a genuine and surprising sort of love for this old man.
You know, against that backdrop, you also have his real lover rushing to try and save him from what is ultimately, you know, a doomed life.
A lot of people lose the love of their lives and then find the loves of their lives. And Cavendish, finds the love of his life.
There she was, Ursula.
I'm always very game for love stories, and this has many love stories in it. I was happy to sit on his lap and bring him the end of his search.
I love that Frobisher, Ben Whishaw, sleeps with Jim Broadbent, Ayres' wife, and then Frobisher comes back as the wife that Cavendish, Jim Broadbent, sleeps with. Did you follow that?
When he's lovemaking with Ayres' wife, is not making love to her, but actually lovemaking with her husband in his mind. Because
well, she is too. They're both
projecting on this other guy, so they're using each other as a surrogate.
And also, interestingly, those two characters play comets in both of their respective chronological time periods. So Ben Whishaw as Frobisher is a comet, and Ayres is rubbing up against him. He wants his comet mojo, and that sort of story ends tragically. And then Georgette comes back, and Cavendish is the comet, and he's trying to get that mojo back as Georgette.
There's no reason to hide. I know you are. To play Sonmi 451 in this film, you need someone who's really, really special, and it's such a special part. And they found it 100% in Duna. Do you like them? You look lovely.
Chang is the only pureblood who is kind to Sonmi. He protects her and loves her. Only Chang exists for Sonmi.
Which just makes it all the more heartbreaking. You know, he cares so much about this fabricant worker and these fabricants in general and this atrocity that's sort of happening in the time that he's living in. And yeah, very quickly falls in love with the young fabricant girl that he's trying to save, you know.
You need silvers? At a certain point, we realize that Sonmi is going to die, and that she has to even witness how the love of her life dies, which is one of the heartbreaking performances, at least for me. When I see Duna look at Jim dying, and yet to have the opportunity in a movie to then cut to the same actors meeting again, because Adam Ewing, played by Jim Sturgis, who just died as Chang, returns home to San Francisco to meet his wife after this endless voyage, opens the door, and we realize the woman who's playing his wife is Duna Bay, who's just lost him. It's like, you know, bring a happy ending twist to a story that seemingly seemed already concluded in sadness.
It was just such an honor to play both of these characters that really represented love, kindness, and sacrifice.
You have to believe at any age, at any time, love can have an impact on your life. You have to believe in this forward motion, that no matter how bad the contraction is, no matter how bad it gets, there's still something that is forward of where we had been before.